22nd of October 2025. Just 2 days after Mashujaa Day, so I should be saying Happy Mashujaa Day, isn't it? Because that's the holiday you've just celebrated. I know some of you took leave after Mashujaa Day, so probably you're getting back to work just now. So we should be welcoming you back to work as well. You're just in time for the morning drift. My name is Simba Elijah Charles Kiage. The hashtag is the morning drift. Well, there's just a lot of issues that we're going to talk about this morning. And I know that we're doing this show at a time when Arsenal is already played Atletico Madrid in the Champions League. Whatever way the result went, to take it, Arsenal. Man City also have played Villarreal. Only Man United are the ones that are still waiting for the weekend to play their matches. But the big boys have the results and they've taken it to the bag. All right, so this is a lot that we're going to talk about this morning. But I want to take you back to a story that was covered back in 2022 when the rest of Africa, or should I say Kenya, was really trying to figure what cryptocurrencies in the economy were going to look like. Now do remember, the Central Bank of Kenya Governor, Dr. Patrick Njoroge, with a very famous quote, he said, "Who will be mad if he bets the Kenyan economy on stable coins?" In fact, he said, you'd rather take him to jail if indeed anything around cryptocurrency was going to be associated with his tenure as a Central Bank of Kenya Governor. As it stands, that is changing, and I'll be telling you what has changed and how it has changed this morning. So the story reads like this, that if you look at majority of central banks back in 2022, they said that cryptocurrencies posed risks to financial stability, but central bank digital currencies could solve problems such as bringing the poor into the financial systems or cutting transaction costs. Kenyan and Nigerian central banks, they did say in 2022. I mean, 2022 is when we're just having the new Central Bank of Kenya Governor, isn't it? So gotta go back to around 2021, or was it 2020, when you find that famous quote by the then Central Bank of Kenya Governor, Dr. Patrick Njoroge. Now this is what it says: Nigeria's e-Naira digital currency introduced last October is a boom for inclusion. That's according to the Deputy Governor then of the country's central bank, and they said in a virtual event that was moderated by International Monetary Fund's Africa Director Abebe Ambre Selassie. Now you're wondering why this particular story is making our introduction this morning, because as we stand here today, there is a couple of bills that have been passed by the President of the Republic of Kenya, that is Dr. William Samoei Ruto. And I'm going to read what those bills are. Some of them are very controversial, but then some of them make the back end of our conversation this morning. Now, a lot of Kenyans came up and really hit on the President for passing some of these bills that I'm going to read for you this morning. But then in that, there is a bill that is called the Virtual Assets Providers Bill, which is essentially a law in Kenya, which has marked a huge step towards regulated digital assets in Africa. Now let's read some of those bills that were passed by the President. One, the 8 bills that were signed into law, that is 4 days ago, that's last week, by the President. One of them, the Cybercrimes Amendment Bill 2024, that changes how Digital Kenya will operate. Now here we are. Under that, under the Digital Assets Bill, you're going to find the SIMS of fraud, the cyberbullying, identity theft, and digital assets scams. Now under that, you're going to find then the Digital Assets Bill, that's the Virtual Assets Providers Bill, which is now law in the country, that is marking a huge step towards regulated digital assets in Africa. Now, that is what the President signed into law 4 days ago. What does it bill then talk about? It essentially regulates how digital assets providers in the country would operate. Now, here is what you gotta know as a business. If you are operating as a business in this country, one, you need a license to operate that business in the country according to this particular bill that has now been signed into a law in the country. And number two, if you're going to operate that business in the country, number one, you need a physical office in this country as well, if you are a business. And then you're going to need to apply for a license under the new regime. Otherwise, you need or you risk enforcement action. It is not clear how the enforcement is going to be taken under this bill, but that's going to come as the CMA and the Central Bank of Kenya then go into further deliberation on how this law is supposed to exist. Now, for individuals, it means that officially then in the country, without you worrying about whether this is going to be a scam or whether this is a legit business in the country, you can buy, sell, or hold crypto in Kenya. But previously, the sector was kind of in a gray zone. That's why you could hear that there are a lot of digital assets scams in the country, with CMA also coming in to warn majority of Kenyans who are getting into these businesses and urged them to wait for regulation, which was pushing for in this particular space. Looks as if they've delivered then, because as of today, as we speak, once this comes into full enforcement, then you do not have to worry. The only thing that you have to do is do your due diligence before you invest in any digital asset in the country or any stable coin in the country. Then what is the role of the Central Bank of Kenya in this particular law? The Central Bank of Kenya is just supposed to regulate stable coins in the country. So for the very first time, we're going to see cryptocurrency like Bitcoin getting regulated by the Central Bank of Kenya. But in digital assets, for them to operate, they gotta get those licenses from the from the Capital Markets Authority in the country. Good. Now, it was passed by Parliament in October 2025, and now with presidential assent. Now, under this legislation, companies providing crypto-related services that are called virtual assets service providers, or VASPs, must be licensed. Now, the Central Bank of Kenya oversees things like stable coins and wallets, while the Capital Markets Authority regulates crypto exchange and token offerings. There are also new requirements for the VASPs in the country to comply with the anti-money laundering, AML, and counter-terrorism financing, the CFT rules, and keep detailed customer and transactional records. Now, we do know that they also operate under a tax regime that is a 3% digital asset tax under the new framework and fee structure, which may change under the new law. Let's then look at exactly what Kenyans are talking about on this particular one. I've got African Leadership Magazine that is saying Kenya Parliament recently passed a virtual asset service providers bill, a framework designed to govern cryptocurrencies, stablecoins, and virtual asset service providers. The legislation now awaiting presidential assent positions Kenya as one of the first African countries to formally regulate digital assets, and an effort aimed at attracting global investment while curbing illicit financial activity. Good. Amy saying Kenya's Parliament passes the Virtual Asset Service Providers Bill, establishing a regulatory framework for digital assets. The ICP Hub Kenya saying big news for Kenya's crypto space. The VASP Bill 2025 is now law, giving digital assets a clear framework under CBK and CMA. Fantastic. Now, under the bill, that's under the Finance Bill of 2023, Kenya will tax content creators highly for digital assets sold. It's actually also part of the digital assets, because under this, it means that NFTs, pictures, videos, and even cryptocurrencies that generate income will pay 3% tax as well. Now, that's exactly what the response has been on this. Let me just pick a sample of responses as well on this. Eric was saying this is a huge win for Kenya and crypto funds. Finally, clear rules for growth and safety. There's also Saul Owen who said regulation is in progress, not victory. Laws don't build adoption, users do. Win was saying cryptocurrency regulation official. Kenya may soon become Africa's digital finance hub. Anne was saying great move by Kenya. Clear rules bring confidence and growth. Good. Synergy Media was saying regulatory clarity like this often precedes real growth. Now, that is a conversation that we're going to have this morning. We're going to be joined by a guest that I will be introducing shortly. He is a player in that space in the country. Is the co-founder, Gold Chapa, a player that has been affected by this new law that has been introduced in the country. I'll be talking to him. And so any question that you may have on this area, please kindly send it into the studio. Your WhatsApp line is right there on the screen. And we are at Lookup TV across all your social media platforms. Let me then jump into what is trending this morning before we get into that conversation. I can see a lot of trends are still touching on Baba. And we do know that Raila Amolo Odinga, it's been now 3 days since it's been laid to rest. For those who are counting might be 4, because it was accorded an official or state burial. Let's then look at exactly what Kenyans are talking about on this particular trend this morning, because I can see Baba is still trending. And then here we go. Let me sample some of the responses this morning. I can see Kim Hussein. Let me even begin on James Orengo, who's still eulogizing Baba. This man, Raila Odinga, a name that shaped our nation's history and lives in the hearts of every Kenyan, a titan, a patriot, an icon, rest in power, Jacom. That is James Orengo speaking this morning. Edwin Sifuna also saying, they did all this for Baba, our neighbors from Tanzania. Those are some of creative Tanzanians then who've gone into to eulogize Baba. This is Willie Oeba, who's saying the man, the myth, the legend, his contributions will be etched in Kenya's annals of history forever. Last of his kind, rest in peace, Baba. That is a tweet there from Willie Oeba. Then lastly, we do have Edgar. How are you doing this morning, man? Let's jump that and read this one from Kanyada. When Sifuna speaks, is speaking for the party. Raila Odinga, Baba died trusting Edwin Sifuna as the party SG, and is responding to some of the tweets that we've seen from Edwin Sifuna. His speech during Raila Amolo Odinga's burial, when he said, well, Raila Amolo Odinga didn't give us a plan post-2027. As ODM, we know that we are in the government up to 2027. What happens after 2027 has to be a party plan. Sort of shutting down those who've been saying that that deal that was signed by Raila Amolo Odinga and President Ruto was supposed to see them post-2027. All right? So be it go well Baba, and that is a tweet then by Edwin Sifuna this morning saying that the plan that were given was only supposed to last them all the way to 2027, not anything past 2027. That question that Raila Amolo Odinga posed, who has told you that ODM doesn't have a political candidate for that top seat in a 2027? Good. Another trend this morning that we're seeing is Gachagua is still trending, and we do know why he's trending. He did give his reasons as to why he missed that state burial by that state burial of former of Raila Amolo Odinga. And majority of Kenyans really have come in to weigh in on that miss. Here's what Timothy is saying this morning. Rigathi Gachagua is not the only option, but the only option we have. You saw how many punitive bills Ruto signed the day Baba died. It's only Rigathi Gachagua who can take him home. Ladies and gentlemen, Zoya the 6th. That's according to Timothy this morning. There's a lot that Gachagua did say then on the passing of Raila Amolo Odinga. I cannot read everything here. He said he did personally condole with Mama Ada, sending those personal condolences to the family of one Raila Amolo Odinga, sort of telling all those Kenyans who were saying that he didn't attend the burial to give him a break. That's what he said, because he said he did look at everything from his security to just how important that day was, and decided not to make it about him. In fact, he said he didn't want to get attacked and all that, with majority of Kenyans then comparing that particular miss with Raila Amolo Odinga, despite being pushed to the wall in the 2017 disputed elections, still went right ahead to support Gachagua in his burial. Then lastly, we do know what's going on at Nottingham Forest for football fans. Sean Dyche has been appointed as the new manager for Nottingham Forest. How this goes is just for you and I to watch, if indeed they can come out of that relegation battle. Sifuna is also trending as well. There's a lot that we've spoken to him, and this morning he's saying to all of you who sent me messages of prayers and encouragement, thank you so much. I'm just getting around to reading and responding. Kindly accept my sincerest appreciation, even if I don't respond to all of them. God bless you. That's what Sifuna is saying this morning. Mjomba was saying Edwin Sifuna is the most appropriate to be the ODM party leader. There is also Dr. Kingori who was saying this morning, if Sifuna plays his cards right, he might be president of Kenya one day. Do you agree? Talk to us at Lookup TV across all your social media platforms. Do you think that indeed Sifuna could be a party leader for ODM? Dan Kakai Suri is saying ODM is divided. That's his sentiments this morning as well. Billy is saying, don't force us into two-term. Don't add anything to a dead person's mouth. That is what Edwin Sifuna did say. Then lastly, then this morning, with ODM, there are parasites, but there are also warriors like Edwin Sifuna, Caleb Amisi, and Babu Wino. We have our own dissatisfactions about them, but they are warriors created out of a strong system. That's according to Nelson Harvey, speaking on 21st of October, 2025. Speaking so much to the divisions and the clear lines that are now coming within the party of ODM after the demise of one Raila Amolo Odinga. Those are some of the biggest trends that we have for you this morning. And by the way, we do have any contributions. Majority of this have also been covered on our social media platforms, that is at Lookup TV, across all of them. We take a tiny breather. Once we come back, let's talk about that digital assets bill that was signed into law by the President of the Republic of Kenya, one President Dr. William Ruto. Once we come back right here on The Morning Drift.
People are there to belittle you. When people are questioning you,
if you don't move fast, of course, yes, you lose it, but then it's not us to push you.
But you do not know the God who has been molding me. What has he been doing to me?
The deep and mature conversations of empowerment for you with a curious mind and an appetite for oriented conversations.
I concur with what you're saying.
You plan your finances, you can easily live without a debt.
an engaging safe space of free expression and truthfulness with an upheld vibrance, motivation and happiness.
So many children who are there, they are not living their dreams.
Join us for deep conversations with Zipporah Gashushe every Saturday from 8 p.m. The Deeper Conversations on Look Up TV.
Save a Life is a non-profit organization that has taken the front line in transforming lives in the entire country. So far, we have transformed life of over 100,000 people through our programs, which include medical support, youth empowerment, street family program, feeding program, and climate change. Join us today as we transform lives. As we always say, service to humanity is service to God. Save a life, transforming lives.
Indeed has passed a virtual asset service providers bill, which has therefore created the first clear legal framework for cryptocurrency and digital assets in the country. What this means is exactly what we're talking about this morning. What has been the journey that we've taken as a country up to where we are right now is what we're talking about this morning. And to be a part and parcel of our conversation this morning, you can join us online and Look Up TV across all your social media platforms. I am at Kia Gesimba. This morning then, let's look at this new law that gives the Central Bank of Kenya the authority over stable coins and the Capital Markets Authority control over exchanges. Supporters say that this will unlock investment and consumer protection, while critics worry about the compliance costs, tax confusion, and enforcement. This morning, then, we talk about both sides of this particular bill. We're going to talk about that compliance cost. We're going to talk about the confusion that is in the tax matters, and also talk about what it means, or the process then of putting this into proper enforcement. Just a quick shadow then into what this is before I introduce the guest who's joining us this morning. It was passed by Parliament in October 2025 and now awaits presidential assent, and we do know very well that indeed whether it does or not after 2 weeks, and this is just going to be part and parcel of what the law of Kenya really states. Under this, the Central Bank of Kenya is going to oversee things like stable coins and wallets, while the Capital Markets Authority regulates crypto exchanges and token offerings. Also, if we look at what tax regime this one operates under, it operates under the Finance Act of 2023 that already introduces a 3% digital asset tax. Under the new framework, the fee structure may change. That's just a snapshot of where we are with this particular bill, and therefore helping us this morning to understand this better, we are joined by Sam Kim, who is the co-founder of Go Chapa. Sam, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Guess what? Just before we delve into our conversation this morning, could you kindly give us an intro of who Go Chapa is, Sam?
Sure thing. So Go Chapa was founded 3 years ago with my co-founder. We're both from Kenya. We're based in Nairobi, Kenya, but we do travel quite frequently. And we are basically a fiat on and off-ramp rail. Also have an exchange, and also offer digital asset wallet So basically, it's an all-in-one platform that we provide to Kenya, also with any country that has mobile money system.
Need some.
Sure thing. First of all, this bill is very timely, and I think crypto already has a very high adoption in Kenya and East Africa as a whole. We've seen a steady rise of people using stablecoins, using crypto for remittance, cross-border payments. However, a lot of these payments, a lot of the capital flows hasn't been transparent. So with the new VASP virtual asset service provider license, the government can have more transparency. It puts startups such as ourselves in a place where we know what we can do and what we cannot do. I think this is very critical because a lot of startups, when we have a strategy, but not a guidance of what we can do and what we cannot do, we spend a lot of time and we spend a lot of energy and money talking amongst ourselves what we can do and what we cannot do. So, but with a clear guidance from now on, I think it's going to put us more on a higher ship and more focused on what we want to offer to the consumers of Kenya.
Pretty much. I'm going to come back to what the country now needs to do to make sure that this is fully implemented and start operating immediately, or if even that is a possibility. Let's look at the responsibilities in regulators in this one. How will the Central Bank of Kenya control stablecoins and the CMS oversight of exchanges work in practice? Can we begin from there?
Yes, so the virtual asset, the VASP for short, license in Kenya is going to be a joint mechanism between CBK, Central Bank of Kenya, and CMA, Capital Markets Authority. So it will be a joint virtual asset unit that oversees two main sides. Number one is the issuance side, which is the stablecoin issuance, which will be licensed through CBK and supervised. And on the other side, we have the exchanges, brokers, for trading platforms that uses stablecoin and crypto. And the CMA will be supervising their market conduct, for example, disclosures, which are very, very key, and also the custodial standards. By custodial standards, what I mean is, are the exchanges segregating customer funds with the operational funds, which is a very, very basic rule. So I think going forward, there's going to be a lot of discussions between CBK and CMA regarding how most effectively to supervise and also to license. And I think this is a good starting point where a lot of the startups that already exist in Kenya can now be onboarded and be transparent and have all the disclosures that we can offer to the government and also to the users of Kenya.
Sam, I hear you speak about this. I mean, that double role there, it's not quite correct. We do know how the Central Bank of Kenya essentially comes in and controls the financial markets in the country. But this one, is it a bit technical that there's a double relation between the CMA and the Central Bank of Kenya? Is that what makes it technical, that we have to wait again for another draft set of an operation module for us to understand how even the licensing is going to be carried out?
Yes, so at this point, we're still waiting for them to publish the guidelines and timeline, and also the application form, for example. So there's going to be a lot of steps that needs to be done before the license are even given out. However, we have worked with CMA from the start of our startup. For example, getting into the sandbox. So, and I am proud to say that GoCheckout was actually the first startup to apply for the sandbox and to get it in CMA. So, working with the CMA and CBK gives me a lot of confidence, and I feel they both have the right people and the team to make the execution timely, and number two, also to comply with all the FATF rules, such as travel rule, which again is a very, very sensitive issue regarding anti-money laundering and doing KYC properly. So I feel like this is going to be a very good a learning curve for startups. And at the same time, it's going to be a good trial and error, but there's been a lot of trial and errors before anyway. So I feel like we can get onto speed as soon as possible.
Just before we went on camera, I did remind you of the famous quote of the previous Central Bank of Kenya governor, that is Dr. Patrick Njoroge, who, when asked about cryptocurrency and stable coins, he said he doesn't see any impact this will ever have in the Kenyan economy, and he said he'll never even give it a thought. Now, where we are right now, Sam, what we have again to wait for the CMA and the Central Bank of Kenya to go back again and give us a module of exactly how they're going to go about this, just to avoid the gaps and overlaps that may occur. Do you think that we might have been at a different stage in the country had we started this early? Was it an oversight from the previous Central Bank of Kenya governor?
So I think you bring a very good point here in terms of timing, because I've been involved with other central banks and other committees in South Korea, Singapore, and I've worked with the governments in other countries advising on the VASP bill. And as you know, in South from 2018 to 21, I apologize for that. So, in terms of timing, I think because there was a rising mass adoption in East Asia at that time, the government was actually pushed to come up with a bill that was not perfect, and that was that had the very skeleton of the licensing bill. However, it needed a lot of data, it needed a lot of trials, a lot of errors to benchmark into making a more concrete bill. However, with Kenya, I think we're in a very good position where we've seen a lot of the VASP bill getting passed in Asia, also in South Africa and Nigeria. And we've seen how in some countries it has actually helped and kickstarted an industry of very well paid jobs and investment. At the same time, in some countries where the bill with too much regulation, with too much effort to crack down on a certain sector, actually kill the industry and kill the innovation. So I think we're in a very good stage where we can work with, and we can benchmark from countries that have seen a big success, and also learn from the malpractices or learn from the mistakes that some of the other countries had.
I'm going to talk to you about a space that you've operated before, and I know majority of players like yourself, Go Chapa, have been self-regulating. Essentially, you've been fighting spaces that have been, I would say, quote unquote, blamed for a lot of frauds, a lot of scams and money laundering in virtual assets. Could you talk to me, Sam? What have you been doing as Go Chapa in this space to self-regulate?
Yes, so when a crypto startup first comes up with a strategy and you start meeting with investors, you start going out meeting with the regulators, 95% of the time you are seen as a scam. Number one. Number two, if you're not a scam, you're doing something illegal. Such as the comment that you mentioned about the CBK previously. But that has been a very I'm very used to that kind of comment, and it's not the first time. Even in South Korea and in Japan and Singapore, which are seen at the forefront of crypto adoption, in 2015 and 16, if you even brought up the word crypto or blockchain, talking to a bank, they will literally just walk out of the meeting and run away from you. And it takes time and it takes a lot of effort. Me personally, coming from a traditional finance background, I was in investment banking for many, many years. I've been involved in capital markets trading. I've been involved with private equity. So I have about 30 years of background in traditional finance. I understand the skepticism. I understand the risk involved. And so for me, as a co-founder of GoChapa, from day one, I wanted to make sure that everything that we do is transparent, number one. And number two, we are open to disclosures. And number three, we take extra measures to protect customer funds. So these are three pillars that we have always worked around with from day one. And I think as a startup getting into this new framework of legal frameworks and with new VAS license, this is not a choice, but it's something that everybody just has to comply with and get used to.
Let's look at what this bill is essentially suggesting, and you're going to look at it and probably tell me whether we are scaring away investors who are already in the country virtually, or we are encouraging them to come back in the country. Let's look at it together. That it's now requiring majority of them to retain a local office in Kenya, have a board of directors, natural persons, as it were. This is exactly what the bill is requiring them to do. Comply with the anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financing rules, and keep detailed customer and transactional records. All this is leading to costs of operations. From where you're sitting, do you think this is bringing them into the country, or you're basically saying, get out?
So it's two ways. First of all, if you have experience like GoChapa have, because we've been involved in other exchanges before, this is not our first exchange. So we know and understand about the cost involved, and the cost can vary. You bring a very good point. This can actually scare away a lot of investors, but at the same time, it can bring in very good investors as well, or more thinking, who has a longer term vision, for example, and doesn't see just a typical pump and dump scheme, which is very typical in crypto. As you know, the crypto adoption, mass adoption in Africa started very slowly, started very late. However, we're seeing a very, very rapid growth from 2-3 years ago. And now, I would say a lot of people trade or have crypto wallets, but they've been doing it on a gray zone. But now they're able to, pick and select the exchanges that they would like to use, and they can verify by saying this is VAS license or this is not VAS license. It's very simple, and I think in terms of cost, it would defer a lot of the startups who are just trying it out. I think you need to have more. You need to raise capital. You need to have decent capital formation as well to stand the long-term strategy. And also, I think you need to be very involved with how the VAT license is shaping up, along with the taxation as well. So previously, if you were just if you just had a good product, now you need a good product on top of that, all the liaisons with all the other mechanisms that have now come to play with the legal framework from the taxation. So unfortunately, the costs do go up. However, this also would deter unnecessary investments.
Go back to the country really trying to understand this space, this digital asset space. It has only thought about it from the Finance Act of 2023, but we do know that you are exposed to a 3% digital tax that starts there and ends there. The critics are saying, now that you have now been onboarded onto an official model, that probably the tax could have been lowered because now other costs have come up. Do you agree that we should have even gone back then and reviewed that Finance Act of 2023 that exposes you to a 3% digital tax? Because if you have a local office here again, you are also exposed to more taxation as well.
That's a very good point, yes. And that is what happened with other countries when I mentioned some countries failed, is because they were overtaxed. For example, in South Korea, I was advising for the previous regime in terms of innovative economies. And crypto obviously is a big part of innovation and economy. So, and we advise that we get rid of certain taxes, such as capital gains tax, which are taxed on your gains of your crypto trading. And this actually opened doors to a lot of new traders and new investors into the market. And that's how South Korea became one of the most successful crypto markets in the world. And I believe in the beginning, the government has to have a long-term vision, a long-term strategy to attract more capital, more investments, more trading, initially by allowing lower taxes. And then later on, step by step, you can have a certain grace period. And this has to be also announced and communicated very well with investors, so they have a good idea of how the taxation is going to be enforced with a certain time period. And I have no doubt that the government now with the VAST bill are looking into a lot of different options, working with the association, working with us, working with a lot of startups in Kenya, communicating. We have a very open communication. And I have no doubt that the government has a full intent to have a lot more investment come in and to foster this market where we'll see a rapid growth of Web3 developers, for example, Web3 marketers, and these are very, very highly paid, well jobs, right? So I envision in the next 3-4 years that Web3 in Kenya is going to be open to everybody. And it's going to be a daily life. People will be trading crypto without even knowing that they're trading crypto. This is how it's going to be embedded. So I have no doubt that the government understands this vision, and that we're actually in line into trying to foster the industry first.
It's been 3 years in the making in the country for Go Chapa. And so this question, you're just going to look back with me. I mean, what would you say was your pain point cost-wise for any startup now looking to come into the country upon this bill? What do you think is going to be the worst pain in terms of starting up in the country?
The worst pain? That's a very critical question.
Nice.
Yeah, in terms of cost, I think in terms of cost, it's definitely going to go up because if you don't have the BAT license, you are illegally operating in the country. Number one, and number two, there could be some, you could be punished by law, basically. So this does put a very stark line between what is legal and what is illegal. I think the startup cost is definitely going to go up. However, I also think that there will be a lot of investments into startups that are capable of the VAST license. And number one, and number two is that have experience working with the users in Kenya, and for them to have a more effective and more transparent startup project than before. So I think it's going to. So I don't exactly have a range of cost in terms of cost. How much it's going to cost more? Roughly but I can tell you roughly it's going to definitely cost more to do a startup in Kenya in crypto. But it would also open doors to other innovations, other parts of the whole crypto industry. I mean, Web3 doesn't exist. It doesn't just exist on stable coins and wallets and exchanges. There's so many other components that make up the whole ecosystem, such as there are vendors doing KYC. There are vendors doing AML. There's marketing. There's conferences. There's so many things that go into the ecosystem. And I believe that when we have a strong ecosystem in Kenya, this is going to create a lot of good jobs for young Kenyans.
I know this was not a surprise to you that this bill was actually in the pipeline, because I do know probably in the making of this bill, you would have been consulted. But upon the passing of this bill, what are those things that you as a founder of Go Chapa look back and said, now we gotta go back and look at how we adjust in these areas? What are those areas that you went back in terms of your operation and said, now that that is passed, we got to go back and restructure our business in this sense? What are we looking at some in terms of your restructuring upon the passing of this bill?
So, unfortunately, to answer your question, we have actually complied. We've made it a mission to actually over comply with all the minimal requirements. So, as I told you, I've worked with South Korea and Singapore exchanges before. So, whatever guidelines we had before, I made sure that we actually overdid everything, such as KYC, AML. Even with KYC in Kenya, as you know, there's geofencing. It's a different kind of KYC. However, we went overboard, and we required users to submit passport pictures, for example, which might have scared some users away. However, we made sure that from day one that we actually carried everything through. But to answer your question, we still don't have the application form. And once the application form is out, of course, we will review all the questions, all the requirements again, and then make sure that we comply 100%, not 99% or 90%, and try and maybe hope that we get the license. No, we're gonna make sure that we comply 100% with all the requirements that the CMA and the CBK is requiring.
Let me take just a view of what your customers have been asking you to do. How has it been? Because we know, well, there's been a lot of allegations of digital asset scams across the world. So when you look at how you've been operating here locally, have your customers been aware of the existence of the scams? And looking back at what they've been requiring of you, have they been asking for proof of some of these things that have now been required by the CMA and the Central Bank of Kenya?
Yeah, that's always been the prime issue with users, because as you know, we're not a global exchange that is venturing into a new market. We are actually a local project that is servicing local clients. So, a lot of people haven't heard of us. Obviously, they'll be very scared to put money into anything that they don't know about. And also, there hasn't been any licensing anyway, so there's no way for them to have a clear guidance or clear knowledge of, whether we are scam or not. I can go around and say we're not a scam to a million people, but if all they see in the news media is about scams, and there has been many scams out of African projects, so it was very difficult in the beginning. However, as I told you, we've been around for some time now. We've established ourselves, our branding. We've grown our community. We've grown our education. We go to universities, meet with students, and try to educate on crypto, not just in crypto, but in fintech in general, in capital markets. So we're putting a lot of effort, and we're going to double the effort from now on education.
Question quickly as you can before we go on a tiny break. That we have 3 minutes before we go for that break. I mean, any other person in this space then is going to ask you, since this has been viewed as a global space in the country, we've had international companies that have been operating as local companies here. Do you think now, with this new system that is going to get put in place by the CM and the Central Bank of Kenya, is it going to make it hard for local companies to compete internationally, since it's now that we're starting with them? In other juries, it may have been in existence, but 4 local companies that now are going to be forced to meet these expectations. Is it going to make it hard for them to compete internationally?
Yes, that's a very critical point that you bring up. And I want to bring up an example of South Korea when they regulated in 2017 and 18. They put the local exchanges first, meaning they didn't give out the BAS license, and they still haven't given it out to the foreign exchange. And so they prioritized in protecting the industry, the local industry first. So they gave out the license to the local exchanges, and for the foreign exchanges, whoever wanted to work in South Korea had to find a local partner to work with. And this has been a very successful route in protecting the local industry, number one, creating a lot of jobs, creating almost close to 200,000 people now working with Web3. And these are very highly well-paid jobs. So I would hope that the CMA and CBK would do something similar, where we are protecting the local markets first, grow it, protect it, grow it to a point where we can stand on our own and then be open to global competition.
Yes, but we take a tiny breather right here on the Morning Drift. We're still with Sam, who is the co-founder, Go Chapa in the country, looking at that new bill that is going to touch what the digital assets business is going to be like in the country. Once we come back, we're going to ask Sam on exactly where we are as a country in terms of financial inclusion and innovation, whether indeed this can be a startup to majority of conversations around financial inclusion, and also compare where we are as a country with other African markets in the country. Also talk about how they've been approaching consumer education and awareness in this particular space. Once we come back right here on the Morning Drift, want to know more about Go Chapa, you can send your sentiments and comments on that WhatsApp line on your screen this morning on any question that you may have on this particular bill. We can get to be answered as well as we go on with our broadcast. Once we come back, still with some. Good morning.
Save a Life is a non-profit organization that has taken the front line in transforming lives in the entire country. So far, we have transformed life of over 100,000 people through our programs, which include medical support, youth empowerment, street family program, feeding program, and climate change. Join us today as we transform lives. As we always say, service to humanity is service to God. Save a life, transforming lives.
Welcome back. Still with us, Sam Kim, co-founder Go Chapa, looking at what's going to happen in the Kenyan space in as regards the new crypto law, and sort of looking at what is going to be the Africa's financial future. Sam, still on this conversation. Let me then take you all to where we are on financial inclusion and innovation. When you look at regulated crypto and stable coins, can they expand access to affordable financial services for ordinary Kenyans? Because this has to be the next chapter of our conversation, going by how serious then the Central Bank of Kenya and the CMA have taken this conversation.
Yes, so, for CBK, controlling or rather overseeing the use of stablecoin is always been a tricky for any central bank in the developing countries. And the reason is because there's a lot of discrepancy with the pricing, with the local fiat and mainly US dollars, and there's a continuation of outflow, meaning a lot of people would like to sell their Kenyan shillings $5 and keep it there, or take the money out. The central banks have always seen the stablecoin as a problem rather than an answer. And the reason is because a lot of people were just using stablecoins to take the money out. And this would create two things: inflation, number one, and number two, deflation of the Kenyan economy. However, now the central banks are switching their mindset into thinking, how can we utilize stablecoins as a payment, as a store of value, and also as transfer of payment. And this is a big turning point in critical thinking of how payments, how store of value functions. So I'm not an economist, and I don't dare to make an assumption in terms of the fundamentals of how the economic shift is going to happen. What I can comment is that the shift is already happening and it's going to accelerate much faster. And it will come to a point that, as I mentioned to you, within, a lot of people say 3-4 years, but I think less than a year or two, people will just be using stablecoins just like they're using M-Pesa, without even knowing what they're using. And this is how I think quickly this is going to get integrated into daily lives. So to answer your question, I think there's going to be a lot of work to be done, a lot of trial and errors, a lot of communication going forward. But I do look forward to these kind of transactions, communications, and open dialogue, and to see how stablecoins can help the average and every Kenyans, as opposed to before we were seeing that stablecoins were being something of illegal. And to answer your question again, in terms of financial inclusion, I think sometimes you need a big leap in innovation to open up the financial inclusion. But also sometimes you need a big leap in mindset. And I think this bill kind of pushes everybody into making a big shift in their mindset and trying to adapt as soon as possible, because this shift has already been happening. It's happening really fast. So you either get on the boat and ride it, or you just get left behind. And we've seen this repeatedly in many innovative stages. We've seen this with the internet, previously with many other technologies, but with crypto, it's just happened so quickly and so in such a large way that I feel like once the Kenyan authorities open up the market, it's just gonna bring a whole wave of new innovation and new usage.
But let me talk about a word that majority of investors in this space have come to fear, or those who wants to venture into this space: speculative losses. It's a big word that is feared in this space. Sam, from what you're saying, do you think that the Central Bank of Kenya and the CMA also need to regulate what speculative losses is when it comes to the Kenyan space?
So as I told you, I've been in capital markets for about 30 years, and I've always not disliked nor disapprove, but there's a certain ambiguity with the word speculation, because in any business cycle, in any innovation cycle, in any technological cycle, there's always a speculation part in the beginning. And you might say they are visionary. Some might say they're visionary. Some might say they're speculator. But if you lose money, then you become a bad speculator. If you make money, then you become a visionary. And unfortunately, in crypto, a lot of people who are speculating are actually they came in at a very later cycle. And the actual speculators are the ones who are doing, who are in, who are in, in mining, who are in a lot of these new layer 1 protocols. And so to say that, there's been a lot of speculative loss is actually a bad judgment of investments, in my opinion. And it's very difficult for the regulators to, regulate or to avoid those kind of speculative investment losses. I always advocate that if you want to invest anything, if you want to put anything in, start trading, or if you want, if you want to learn anything on the basics of finance, you really have to do your own studies. You really have to understand the mechanisms. You have to read a lot of books, you have to read a lot and do your homework before you make any kind of investments. So I think those are the key, and the government, I think, will make a lot of educational materials for the people. I think this is going forward. It's going to be I think it's going to be a good learning experience for average Kenyans as well.
You've also been in markets where this regulation actually has been implemented and works. The question that I wanted to ask you is that should Kenya copy and paste a working framework in this area, or should they just go right ahead and adopt their own unique framework that is special to the way that these companies are going to operate in Kenya? Right, I did seem to lose Sam right there momentarily, because I was at a point where I was asking Sam whether indeed it's important for Kenya to get its own framework in terms of this regulation, or just come up with a framework that works, because we do know that indeed South Africa, Nigeria, and Mauritius, in terms of licensing, have really taken proper steps. And when it comes to consumer protection and enforcement as well, they've made proper steps in this area. I wanted to ask him really to give us an oversight into this, and also some of the lessons that Kenya can learn from these countries to ensure fair oversight and innovation. Also, in the country, some of the areas that we really have to talk about when it comes to this particular bill now that they've passed it is how the government and fintech players can raise awareness about the crypto risks and benefits now that it's official in the country, and also if indeed public education programs before allowing large-scale retail access to virtual assets are quite important in the country, going by the fact that indeed there has been alleged scams in this particular area. Now that CMA and the Central Bank of Kenya are involved, it's going to be quite an intricate process just to understand, because we do know that Kenya is among the leading in terms of stablecoins adoption. With the CMA licensing, it's also going to be interesting to see how these two can relate as well. Also talking about issues on regional integration and global reputation, I wanted to see what opportunities can arise for Kenya as a regional hub for digital asset exchanges and a custody, and how can Kenya cooperate then with our African regulators to prevent money laundering and protect investors, because investors have been quite, conversations around investors in this particular area has been a big conversation, because they want to grow this particular sector in the country, then indeed investors have to be at the forefront of your conversations as a country as well. Also, more importantly, looking at what additional rules are needed to ensure long-term consumer protection and financial stability, and if indeed one amendment could make law more effective, and what should it address as well. Those are some of the issues that we're supposed to get into with Sam this morning. If I can't get him back on call, then that has been our conversation this morning as well. We seem to have had difficulties in our connection this morning, but that is essentially our conversation that is touching on this particular space. Also for you to know, indeed, that the Kenya Virtual Asset Service Providers Bill 2025 was passed by Parliament in October 2025 and now awaits presidential assent. Also, under this legislation, companies that are providing crypto-related services, also called Virtual Asset Service Providers, VSPs, must be licensed. That's number one. Now, the Central Bank of Kenya oversees things like stable coins and wallets, while the Capital Markets Authority regulates crypto exchanges and token offerings. That's the relation in this as well. Now, there are new requirements for the VASPs in the country that they must maintain a local office in Kenya, have a board of directors, natural persons, nothing virtual, because virtual conversations have been a thing that has been spoken about heavily in the country. They must also comply with the anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financing rules and keep detailed customer and transactional records. Also, a tax regime is already in place since the Finance Act 2023. The crypto transactions were subjected to a 3% digital asset tax under the new framework and fee structure, which might change. Now, for those who are wondering what it means then for individuals and businesses, it means that once now this bill has been passed, as an individual, you can buy, sell, or hold crypto in Kenya, but previously the sector was in a gray zone with a little legal protection for investors. Now the law aims to give more clarity. So that's quite clear now. Under CMA, you're going to find that any other person who's operating in the country is covered by that CMA license. So it's going to be easy for you, just like Sam was saying then, for you to do your homework, know exactly what stable coins you're getting into, buy and trade legally in the country without fear of that being a legal scam that is operating in the country. For crypto businesses, this is what it means. If you're running an exchange, issuing a token, providing wallets, or offering ICOOs, you will need to apply for license under the new regime. Otherwise, you risk enforcement action. We're going to see exactly what that bill states then in terms of the punishments that are going to be enforced to those businesses that are trading in ICOOs in the country without that particular license. That will be coming to you. Otherwise, you risk that enforcement. We're going to see exactly what the CMA rules are going to state in terms of the punishments that are pushed to that. For regulation and enforcement, now Kenya is aligning to the international standards, for example, the Financial Action Task Force standards on virtual assets, and strengthening oversight to avoid money laundering, fraud, and consumer harm. That's exactly why this conversation is important. And then it means that now, for any other person then wanting to trade in stable coins in the country, and also for businesses that are coming into the country under digital assets, then you do know that you are covered by that particular law. Sorry, we can't seem to get some back online, so that has been our conversation this morning. You can actually get to talk to us at Lookup TV across all your social media platforms. My name is Simba Elijah Charles Kiangi. I'll see you another day for more conversations around this and much more in the country. Good morning and